Martha Bloom, age 68, had never considered herself forgetful, merely selective in memory. She remembered her wedding day in 1973. Every lyric to Elvis Presley's "Can't Help Falling in Love," and exactly which neighbor let their dog do business on her lawn without cleaning up. But somehow, on a perfectly ordinary Wednesday, Martha lost her hearing aid. "I know I put it on the nightstand," she muttered, patting every surface like a TSA agent at an airport. Her husband, Stanley, 71 and eternally patient, sipped his coffee at the kitchen table. "Are you sure it's not in your ear?" Martha gave him a glare over her bifocals. "Stanley, if it was in my ear, I wouldn't be shouting at you. Would I?" He shrugged. "You shout even when you're wearing it." Martha stomped back to the bedroom, muttering, "Useless old bat," under her breath, though it wasn't clear if she meant Stanley or herself. The hearing aid was gone. Vanished, like socks in the dryer or the remote control when a grandchild visits. So began the great hearing aid caper. Blank. Step 1. Enlist help. "Alexa," Martha shouted at her voice assistant, which had learned to flinch when she raised her voice. "Where is my hearing aid?" "I'm sorry," the machine replied calmly. "I can't help with that." "Well, you're no use at all," Martha snapped. Stanley peeked in. You could just retrace your steps." Martha rolled her eyes. "If I could remember my steps, I wouldn't have lost it in the first place." She dialed her daughter. "Rachel." "Mom, breathe," Rachel said, as Martha shouted down the phone. "I am breathing, but I can't hear anything except Stanley chewing like a goat and the cat dragging something under the couch." "Did you check under the couch?" "I'd have to get on the floor for that." "Do I look like a gymnast?" There was a long pause. "I'm coming over. Blank. An hour later, Rachel arrived with her son, Tommy, who was 10 and in the phase of childhood where everything was either boring or epic. "Hi Grandma," he said, holding a juice pouch like it was a chalice. "Mom says you lost your ear thingy." Martha patted his head. "Yes, darling, I've misplaced my very expensive, tiny, flesh-colored piece of technology that keeps me from yelling at people in grocery stores." Tommy grinned. "Cool, like a spy gadget." Rachel sighed. "Mom, when did you last remember having it?" "Last night, I was watching that rerun of Murder, She Wrote. Jessica Fletcher was about to expose the killer. And then Stanley sneezed so loud I nearly had a heart attack." Stanley poked his head into the room. "That wasn't a sneeze. That was a sneeze and a cough. I might have pulled something." Rachel groaned. "Okay, everyone, focus. Let's find the hearing aid. Blank. The search was on. Tommy took it seriously, crawling on all fours like a bloodhound. "I found a Cheeto under the couch," he announced. "Not helpful, sweetheart," said Rachel. Stanley looked under the recliner. "All I found was my dignity from 1984. Martha checked the freezer. "Don't ask." Rachel, trying not to lose her mind, opened every drawer in the house, mumbling, "It's always in the last place you look." After an hour, they found a 1992 TV remote, a sock with a hole in the shape of Ohio, 3 pennies, and one very angry cat. But no hearing aid. Later that evening, they all sat in the living room, defeated. "I'll have to buy a new one." Martha sighed. "They're expensive," Rachel said, "but maybe it's time for a newer model. One with Bluetooth." Martha perked up. "Will it play Elvis?" "Possibly." Stanley leaned over. "You can also connect it to your phone. Listen to calls straight in your ear." Martha blinked. "That sounds like magic. Do I have to download an app?" "Yes." "Never mind." Just then, Tommy, still playing detective, held something in the air. "I found it." Everyone turned. It was in your house slipper. "Grandma." Martha stared at the small hearing aid sitting in the palm of his hand. Slightly dusty, slightly bent. "My slipper?" she whispered. "You must have stepped on it by accident," Rachel said. "That's why it's been making that weird squealing noise." "I thought that was the tea kettle," Martha exclaimed. Tommy beamed. This was epic. The next morning, Martha and Stanley went to the hearing clinic. "Well," said the technician, examining the poor little device, "it's had a rough night. But we can fix it." "Good," Martha said, "because I've just realized how much Stanley sounds like an old lawnmower." Stanley gave her a grin. "And you sound like a crow yelling at traffic. Still love you, though." The technician smiled. "Do you want to try a new model while we repair this one? It even has voice controls." Martha's eyes narrowed. "Can I tell it to ignore certain people?" No, the technician chuckled. But it does have a setting for crowd reduction. I'll take 2. Blank. Underscore. Blank. 1 week later, Martha was back to normal, or as normal as she'd ever been. Her new hearing aid fit perfectly and played Elvis on command. She'd even figured out how to answer calls hands-free, though she often shouted, "Hello?" even before accepting them. At the next neighborhood bingo night, she strutted in with confidence. "Nice earrings," said her friend Jean. Martha leaned closer. "They're not earrings. They're hearing aids." Jean raised a brow. "Fancy. Bluetooth enabled." Martha replied proudly. "I can hear the bingo caller and ignore my husband. Technology is glorious." As the numbers were called, Martha tapped her ear. "Play Jailhouse Rock," she whispered. In the middle of B12, she began to shimmy in her seat. "Is that Elvis?" Jean asked. Martha nodded, tapping her foot. From across the room, Stanley watched, sipping punch and smiling. Sometimes aging was a little ridiculous, a little inconvenient, and occasionally full of lost things and odd noises. But as long as you had music in your ear and someone to laugh with, it wasn't so bad after all.